Welcome to I Love This Flick, the podcast in which we talk about movies in which we thoroughly enjoy and feel the emotion of love towards. I am your host, a third generation clone of Joshua William Pfizer, and
And I drew an elephant, and you drew an elephant, and we can both draw an elephant.
yes, we can both draw elephants.
I'm God Baby Tanner Randall.
My God, baby. That was an amazing segment of this very delightful animated
Experience.
experience. We'll say that for now, but yeah, welcome to I Love This Flick. This is Tanner Randall and I'm Josh Pfizer, and we are closing out
Janamary.
Janamary. That doesn't make you just and it's only gonna get worse. Here's the thing. He has these all planned out, and
got spreadsheets.
Most of the puns suck. Fucking what is it? Yoon? Fucking
yeah.
YOU. Like, what does that
if
even
that's how you
mean?
choose to spell it. If that's how you want to spell it, that's fine.
God damn it. Anyway, so we are continuing our animation choosing for this month. Last time I chose Akira, and this time Tanner chose a movie that it means a lot to you. I remember when you got the disc and you expressed great joy from getting it.
Yeah, I love animation in general. It's one of my preferred mediums anyhow. And I'm a big believer that not all animation, especially in America, needs to be for children. So anytime I get an adult animated series, not like Adult Swim type kind of adult, which feels more immature than what I'm looking for, but when I get
a lot of the stuff is very good.
Yeah, Venture Brothers is my favorite thing, so no judgments, but sometimes I want a nice hefty mature piece of content, and sometimes it comes in the form of Akira, and sometimes it comes in the form of a God Baby program for the world of tomorrow.
Hello, Emily.
Well, and before we get into the movie, let's talk a little bit about animation for adults, because I feel like in terms of like what we have now, it is very limited. When I talk about I mean American animation for adults. Last time you talked about this great wealth of anime for adults that goes through the entire gambit of stuff.
Yeah, it's not adult because it's violent. It's not adult because it's gory. It's adult because of the subject matter is what a child would describe as boring. It's drama, it's character stuff. It's more than when American stuff becomes adult. It's easy to think of the Adult Swim in that it's got some swearing or it's a little bit more violent, or it's dirtier or more crass humor. Think heavy metal. Right, like that's adult animation because it's about boobies, and rock and roll.
Yeah, it is.
For at least 20 minutes of it, it's mostly about boobies. More than 20 minutes of heavy metal is about boobies. That's not fair.
It's not fair. It's not fair. We should give heavy metal credit. A lot of it is
boobies. Lot of it is about boobies.
Most of it is about boobies. But yeah, and, I kind of want to really look into this kind of stuff, just in terms of adult animation, because of course, when we talk about animated history, we go back. You could argue the first actual uh, uh, images put to movement, from just taking rapid stills from a camera, could be considered animation, the way they did it.
You just
Uh,
described movies.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Um, but in the very primitive form, in a way like, oh, you do a flip book. Um, and you go on, and a lot of it is directed towards children. Um, whether today a lot of that stuff would be appropriate for children, like say the very racist stuff. Um, that Donald Duck cartoon is very
And it's not just Donald, it's also like Mickey Mouse, like, who's based off of that era of minstrel performer. Like
right.
it is kind of baked into everything, unfortunately, in
Yeah.
America. And it's because just so much of American animation is a response to Disney. Um, it's all following the success of the people who did it the most successful here. So that is, I mean, I get from a business perspective why American studios tend to favor kid stuff, and that's starting to expand out there a little bit. Obviously, one of my
Yeah.
all-time favorite animated movies is Wall-E, which is impossible to describe as a kids movie, like which is true for frankly most Pixar stuff. It's really hard to classify that as kids,
Yeah.
but it is. I mean, that's even Disney itself, right? It's not whatever we just watched is. Like this is a whole separate
Yeah.
thing, and
Well,
it just opens your mind to what we should have an abundance of this weird shit, and I wish we had more of it.
yeah, I think, I mean, first off, if you just describe just the basics of some Disney plots, they could be, um put into, like, I just saw a Polish uh movie called EO, which is The Adventures of a Donkey. That's it. So if I give you that description, you will not be prepared for the places that this movie goes, both, um both,
Literally, and
yeah, both morally and, how dark it get, because it's not like continuously a dark movie, but it does get into dark subject matter and has a point to make. But from my description, it's just like, oh yeah, that sounds like Homeward Bound or something like that. Um, so, but in terms of adult animation, like my earliest, knowledge of like stuff of what you consider adult animation would come from like the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, I talk a lot about the Hollywood New Wave, and I feel like that is also a part of it. You got Fritz the Cat, which also hasn't really aged well.
no, no, it has not.
And hey, surprising fact. Ralph Bakshi and who's the creator of it's R. Crumb hated each other. Can you believe these two guys with
Huh.
such that are so easy to get along with other people, um would not like each other?
Shocking.
These two very pleasant people. Um but yeah, in terms of America, like that's kind of like the earliest examples you get, and of course they're similar to like the juvenile stuff that we see on like Adult Swim and stuff like that. Mainly because like you just couldn't do that at all. I mean, this is still fairly fresh out of the Hays Code era. Um, so it's just like, hey, let's just fuck around. You see so many wild movies from that era because of the restrictions that they were under, for most of cinema history up until that point. So, I mean, I just saw a discussion on adult animation, like where we're at now. Like as we are recording this, they just dropped the news that Justin Roiland was going to get cut, um, from Rick and Morty, and mainly because the reason they don't cancel it is because it is the biggest adult animation show there is.
Well, that's
right
one
now.
reason. The other reason is the crimes.
Oh no, no, no.
I'm
I
gonna
I, I
say, well,
meant
no, no,
like
no,
the
no,
reason
no, no. So
they didn't just cancel Rick and Morty.
well,
That's what I'm saying.
no, and I'm let me finish here. The crimes and horrible deeds of one man should not cost an entire team its job.
Yes.
It's hundreds of people that a TV show employs. And how shitty would it be of this one dude who did such terrible, heinous things also got hundreds of people fired? Right? Like, so I actually have so much more respect for Adult Swim continuing the show than I do if they had cut it. Like,
Right.
because
Yes.
there's
Exactly.
real people whose jobs are at stake because a dude is a sexual deviant. That's
Yeah.
not fair.
Yeah.
Deviancy is fine. It's when it becomes criminal, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
all terrible.
yeah, and also something I've heard is this like Justin Roiland was kind of
Hey, we don't need to talk about him. That's
lazy.
also a thing. Like
So
we,
like
yeah,
Dan Harmon taking over the show is just like, okay, this is probably. I also watched Solar Opposites a little, and it was like, oh, it's apparent Dan Harmon is the guy who's writing the good stuff.
great. A show that also starts a guy who's credibly accused of sexual misconduct. So like, it's kind of not a whole lot of winning on any of
No,
this at the moment.
well, I was just thinking about the fact that Tuca and Birdie got canceled right after the Tiffany Haddish stuff, which I thought was unfortunate because it was one of my favorite animated shows.
It's maybe my favorite Stephen Yoon performance. So yes, his speckle on that is truly the best.
I'm sorry, Jupe's claim.
That's it doesn't hold a candle to speckle. Uh,
Look, Chris Kattan.
One of the things that's getting that I think sets the world of tomorrow, which is what we watched and are going to talk about, apart from all of that, is the independence of it. And that's something when we talk about adult animation and its limitations, we're talking about an industry, and how we fight industry is finding ways and which are easier now than they've ever been in the history of America or the world to support independent art. I don't know. I'm assuming you bought this from the same link I sent you, which was his website, Don
Yes, the
Hertzfeldt's,
direct website.
right?
Yes.
So like I bought it from the creator. This was not backed by some studio. He made this. I mean, there's a team with him, but this was all self-done. There's clearly no notes. In a good way, in that this gets to be as weird and experimental. It's the only way you're going to get stuff that's not like something you've already seen before. When you have investors, you have to guarantee investments. There has to be a return. This doesn't have to have a return because it's artistic expression. And that rules because it gets you one, sci-fi should be weird, and it's now you can get weird like uncomfortably and just really hard to understand, like makes me fall asleep because my brain works too hard to figure out what's going on, kind of work weird. And then also you can just animate things in ways things aren't animated, which is what a lot of this is visually.
Yes, absolutely. This is for the most part and again we're talking about The World of Tomorrow by David Hertzfeldt, the
Don
animator, and
Don Hertzfeldt.
Don Hertzfeldt. Sorry, yes, Don Hertzfeldt. And the thing is, if you haven't even heard of this, you have seen his work because he did a series of Pop-Tart commercials, animated that were I remember being incredibly funny.
Yeah, I mean, they're incredibly dark. Like,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
if we really think about like, the concepts for a lot of these commercial, I mean, it's not any different than the M&M commercials where they're sentient beings and everybody's still trying to eat them. This I'm just saying, like, those are a tradition amongst commercials for sugary things.
And also from early internet virality days. He had a short film collection that I believe called It's Such a Beautiful Day, which many people remember. It's just a collection of like little short animated scenes that are very reminiscent of like the art style at the beginning of this for like chapter 1. Which, that's got like my spoon's too big, bees flying out of my nipples, Um, if those words mean anything to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is the same artist who did that. A big fan of that. I used to that was middle school for me. I used to watch that so much. So I've been kind of obsessed with this guy's work since I was a teenager.
Yeah, I wasn't really familiar with him until you brought it up, and then one of those things like it's good that one of the reasons why we do this is to share like things that we love with each other,
I
and
would say, based off the title of our series, that's what we should be
yes,
doing.
and I think that that's pretty much what that I'm glad you have the theme months as much as I fucking hate that. I fucking hate the fucking puns. So that we can like, okay, here's what I love from this genre, and we're not just going down a list of things that we think that we should be
We think
doing.
are
But
important. I'm done
yeah,
talking about things that are important. I'm ready to talk about things that I find fucking interesting and
right,
weird.
right. And I'm gonna say this, and might upset you. I didn't think was all that weird.
I
I mean, it's weird in certain contexts, but in like, maybe it's because you and me, we both like go in for like weird stuff. Like, we're more receptacle to stuff like that. I found here's the thing is like, these concepts I've seen or read in other sci-fi, which is not like to say, oh, it's unoriginal. It's here's the thing: if you can put stuff like that in a very concise way, I think that means so much as a storyteller.
and I mean weird in the way that there's an extended 4 minute sequence where an alarm just goes off nonstop for 4 minutes straight, and it's just never turned off at all.
Right.
Weird as in, why would you make that choice? I'll tell you why, to piss me off, and it's awesome. To drive you insane. Boy, we'll get to it, but I
Yeah.
love chapter
But I
3. I want to live inside of chapter 3 of this.
um but yeah, I think like it's more I the thing that impressed me the most, and like we said, these are three separate short films, but in all honesty, the reason like we can talk about this as a movie is because they have it it plays out like a movie. There's act 1, act 2, act 3, and they all connect to one story that makes sense as a whole.
And you could legitimately watch each chapter on their own, and they are each a self-contained story. You could,
Yes.
and you'll find a lot more comedy in it, but you're gonna miss some pretty heavy through lines that are very evident, especially by the time you get to the third one, which is kind of uh like a
It's
Herald improv structure, in that it like ties back everything we talked about in the first two chapters. It all ties it up very neatly, in a very depressing story, that
yes.
I love, that really just irks at my heart.
I'm gonna be and another thing is like I just find this to be I it's kind of weird that we say it like this because like we got stuff like The Outer Limits and Twilight Zone, but when it comes to technology, our go-to example for like uh um mainstream uh pop culture that does stuff is Black Mirror, which is hit or miss. Like that's a thing about like it Black Mirror was huge when it came out because like nobody was doing that really at that time anymore. Like I mentioned, the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. But yeah, it also like as it went on, it was just like, okay, I don't think you're actually making any points anymore. You're
But
just doing like
that can be said of the Twilight Zone, at its time. Like, not every episode of Twilight Zone is good.
oh
In
no.
fact, almost all of them are bad. Some of them are
Um
good. Is it same with
I
like Star Trek, right? Like most Star
yes.
Trek 1 original Star Trek, the William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy Star Trek, is bad. Like, and I love watching it. I'm not like despair, like, but it's
No,
like it's campy, it's pulpy. The sets literally move when people lean against. Like, it's poorly and cheaply made, and it's a cult hit, and it's wonderful, and the ideas it brings are delightful. Like, I don't want to be mean to it, but it's not all good.
You're absolutely right. They recycle plots like, hey, an energy being is attacking the ship. Like that happens like 5 times within the 3 seasons. But of course, the episodes that are great are some of the best episodes of television of all time.
100%. And it's the same with Twilight Zone. It's the ones that it's same with even like Tales of the Crypt, which maybe even has a higher failure rate. There are some truly scary hours of television made from the Tales of the Crypt series. Just like Are You Afraid of the Dark even has a couple like stellar episodes. Like, you know, any TV series, you're usually, especially an older TV series we look back fondly of, it's because we're only remembering the good, which used to forget the bad.
It's the reason why, you know, when people say, and, you know, I'm not saying Saturday Night Live is a good show right now. I've been like in and out of it. Like Audrey Plaza was the guest last week, so I've been looking at. I mean, it's fucking Audrey Plaza. She's been my crush for such a long time.
Sure. I also think SNL has a great cast right now.
And here's the thing, they always have a great cast and they always have great writers. The problem is that I don't think that they're utilized in the best way. You know, and because like Saturday Night Live tries to pick some of the best people for their show. But what I was saying is like, everyone's just like, oh, Saturday Night Live used to be great. And it's like, you're just remembering like, you know, Two Wild and Crazy Guys or the Blues Brothers or
the best
Rosanna
of
Dana.
DVD sets, not the actual every other episode in between those, or the fact that those are usually one sketch pulled from an hour and 45 minutes of television. Like, you know, this episode had one memorable sketch out of 2 hours of shit.
Yeah, and it to a point where like, if I ask anybody, okay, who was the first guest on Saturday Night Live, and it should be an easy one for them to get, they won't know off the top of their head because it's. And they should know because it's fucking George Carlin. So it's just I think people's nostalgia for the things that they loved kind of blocks them from realizing, oh, if something has been going on for a long time, or if like you said, it's like it's an hour and a half of television, a lot of it's gonna be shit.
Yeah.
You got to fill time.
It's just a numbers game.
But anyway, we're not talking about like that. We're talking about World of Tomorrow.
We're talking about Emily Prime, Little Emily, Emily 6, Emily 4, Emily 2, Emily 9.
So you're just gonna keep going.
And David.
You're gonna go through all the Davids?
Well, no, there's also just Felicia.
But the first one came like you know the history better than I do. So do you want to talk about how these were released?
So they were released on Venmo, or not Venmo, Vimeo.
I hate that. I fucking hate how close those are. Like on my phone, the like, you know, and I had you know, I really should do this for every app I have, but like putting them into different categories.
Oh, I have folders. I'm very
So like Venmo and Vimeo are just like you can't have them together or else you're gonna.
So I will say my personal experience with this was written up by David Ehrlich for IndieWire, which is where I read one of my publications I like to read for my movie stuff, and talked about how good this was. And so it got on my radar, and then I looked into it. And at the time I was looking into it, there wasn't an easy way for me to watch it. There wasn't like a physical release. I could just rent them on Vimeo, and I did. I spent like $8 and I watched the first one, or the first two. This was before the third one had come out. Excuse me. And then when the third one came out, he also announced that they were going to do a physical release, and he was selling it. So went to his website, was very excited to own them because physical media rules. And then watched it. As far as the why and how of it, I don't know. Mostly because this guy's very private. this did do the festival circuit. It won a bunch of awards just as a short for the first one. The second one also won a bunch of awards, and then it went when the third one came out. It kind of went to the festivals as a trilogy, like we watched it as like one kind of package. And then it won so many awards. This would have been in like 2022. I want to say is when the third one came out, or 2021. No,
It says
2022.
2020.
Or yes, correct, 20.
It says 2020 on the
Yeah,
DVD.
the fun thing about the pandemic times is I don't know anymore. I
Oh
remember
God,
I
how?
got it right at the early pandemic, so that was all I could
Okay, yeah.
remember. And then yeah, I have been watching it ever since. For people who want to watch it before we start getting into what happens, episode 1 is on YouTube, so you can watch it
Yes.
for free. It's totally available. Well, maybe even it might even be below us in a link somewhere.
Yeah, and it is a thing where I think, yeah, if you're at all interested in anything with that we've said so far and you haven't seen this, definitely, you know, check it out on Vimeo. Get the DVD if you're so inclined to. Because it's one of those things, one of those stories that does surprise you how it unfolds.
And you can get all 3 on YouTube, and all 3 are still available on Vimeo. So this is out there if you just want to rent. You can get it fair. You can for like $8 watch all 3 of these. I think it was what $25, $20 to buy
It
the
was like
Blu-ray.
$25 for the
It
Blu-ray. Yeah.
was the cost of a Blu-ray to get the Blu-ray of it, which I love. One, the art's cool. It comes with a little book that I really
Yeah,
like.
yeah, which I just got done watching it, so I haven't read the booklet yet, but I'm really interested in what's in there because it's surprisingly thick for an independent release.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's the cool. I mean, if an artist is proud of their work, it's like they put effort into how it's presented to people.
yeah, it's just something that you would think of for a Criterion or Arrow release is like the a good size booklet.
um, and yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for like where it came from. Before we dive into what it's actually about, so now's the time to pause us, go watch it before we kind of go into the psyche of Emily Prime.
Which so the movie well, the first short film begins with um and it's hard to do a quick synopsis because so much happens. But
Yes, it does.
to run down each short film, the first one begins with a little girl. I would say like
Yeah, 4 or 5.
4 or 5. I don't know ages. I think my niece that was born in November is like 26. I don't know ages.
She's
Um,
drinking by now.
yeah. um, uh, she's visited by a clone of herself and explained as a third generation clone. And she is there. She takes Emily outside or inside of time and space. It's really cool. Little Emily is basically just a child. I want to learn like whether or not her lines were written, how much of her line, because obviously I bet like some of it was like, oh, she just said this. Let's put that in at this moment. Um, but just showing around the future, and the future is a lot of clones, space travel, a lot of the class dystopia and just tech dystopia that we associate with future stuff. She explains this man David who one of the clones was very much in love with, who was kind of off. He was off, but he was still great, and they loved each other. And one day he just drops dead, ending the line of clones. But other things are explained. People can go. I love the bit about like experimental time travel.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Where
that's the thing. Between all of this business, there's jokes.
yeah,
It is nonstop getting barraged by either information or comedy. Nonstop,
yes,
relentlessly for like 12 minutes.
and most of the information is comedy. It's the comedy because of this absurdist take on on the future, on technology. and a lot of it isn't
Sadly, that
novel.
absurd.
Yeah, yeah, it's not like novel takes, like, we would watch now we watch people watching screens, stuff like that. I mean, that's basically what the fuck, that's
Yeah, but it
almost what
doesn't.
YouTube
That
is.
is what is, well, yeah, and it's what's happening on this, but it doesn't talk about that. It
No.
talks about like the other stuff, like, hey, we figured out how to do time travel, but of course, if the Earth's rotation's a little different, a lot of people just end up thrown into space. Uh,
Or
um,
crushing,
or crushed under the Earth's core,
or in the past. um
and unable to come back. Like time travel is not like a smart or easy or successful thing, and people do it anyhow because they're bored.
yes. But the Emily clone is there to extract a specific memory from little Emily, um, and then leaves, and then that's pretty much it. It's a nice. Here's the thing. These are all like, aside from the last one, which is like of the seems like the most highest concept sci-fi thing
Yeah,
that they've
oh
done.
yeah, oh yeah.
I think mainly because they really have to link all the things from the first two
And it's
together.
doing like 9 concepts as opposed to
Yeah,
each one of these where it's just like, well, we know of the internet, what would the outer net be? And that's kind of what this one is about.
yeah. Well, and I will say about the last one, that's the least accessible on its own. That one
Correct.
feels like you do need to have seen the first two. The second one, you know, what is it again? It's a copy of a clone, or it's a backup
It's
clone.
a backup. So the way the cloning works, which I feel like should be explained just before we go too much further, because it's
Because that
very important to the rest of everything.
yes.
The way it happens is when you get old, you can make a clone of yourself, but that clone can't house all of your memories. Think of it like upgrading your computer. So you have to have a backup to store some of your memories. So that backup is you have a primary clone, and then you have 2 backup clones that store other parts of your memory. Now, the backups are copies of a copy, so they are not as well put together as the prime, which is why you have a prime and 2 backups. But that
Think of like the last clone from Multiplicity.
and that is a continuing thread. So when your prime is about to die again, that prime copies himself and then creates 2 backups. So if he should need a new organ, donations, just to have around, you just always have 2. So there's a clone and 2 backups. The clone has no number on their head. The backups are numbered on their forehead because of their identification bracelets. It's like projected onto them. It's a little thing it doesn't really talk about, but it exists. So that's the general idea of clones in this, only because we're going to be talking about generations of these things.
Yes, and again, like I think like we'll probably do a very simplified version of it
And
because
it will
it'll
be
get
wrong and it will be poorly explained.
to quote a movie that I'm going to bring up because I think it's relevant. If we just go into the minutia of it, we're just gonna be putting straws on the table trying to figure out, timelines and stuff like that.
And also a
Um,
fair amount of it has like what's Inception rules, where it's just like, hey, just don't think about it too much. Like, look, it makes sense if you like glance over it, but if you actually stop and think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Just do the first part where it's just like, no, this is a pretty cool concept. Don't think on it. Just
yeah,
move on.
it's less primer and more
And the benefit of this is it's not about all that stuff. It's actually a very personal story about
yes.
David and Emily. Like it's a very personal story, even amongst all this heady sci-fi bullshit.
Yeah, most sci-fi is metaphor.
Yeah, it's human.
As it
Yeah.
as the as it really should be, because then it's just like what it's describing a hypothetical situation that'll happen in the future. It doesn't mean anything emotionally.
Yeah, it's why I love Prometheus and Covenant. It's about looking for God, and it's not about Alien at all. It just so happens that there's xenomorphs in it.
I mean, again, Star Trek. A lot of it is metaphor.
The first Star Trek, the motion picture, is about looking for God. Science has a cool thing about looking for God.
Same with 5, but to be honest, I prefer to watch 5 than motion picture because motion picture is kind of a slog to get through.
I'd rather watch 4 than all of them because it's fun.
I'm sorry, 2. We'll get into it. We have a month in
we have
which we're going to do,
Spocktober coming up.
which I am very scared about what your pick will be.
Oh, yeah. Be excited. But
God.
that's many months away, and I've got a
Yeah,
whole bunch of
that's
life-changing things happening between now and then. So I'm not even going to think about it currently.
yeah, we're gonna have to backlog a lot of
Oh,
episodes.
sure are. We're going to
Yeah.
record a lot in February.
Look, I drawed a triangle.
I drew a snake boy.
But someday you have to not make a snake boy. Because yesterday I didn't see any snake boys, but you made one.
Yes.
Can I do the other but go down round things?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Okay. I have many memories that I would like to share with you now, Emily. We can go visit them together, like seeing pictures in a book. Please follow me into the window.
Circle.
Yes.
Speaking of recording a lot, all of your memories are recorded in the future, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's cool. Kind of would, knowing me, I'd probably do that thing where I go back and like in my own mind, I go back and rethink about shit I did wrong. So
Yeah,
again,
but also
like
it's interesting because again, this really does deal with a lot of copies of copies of copies because Emily 6 does implant some of her own memories into Emily Prime. So that means some of the memories throughout all of the Emilys are not real memories because of the way that works. Again, a lot of heady stuff that you can kind of breeze over if you don't want to think about it, but it's all there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, look, trust us, just watch the movie. It
Might not make sense. It might not. You might not. It might not make sense to you. It is total. Yeah. I've had to watch this multiple times to like follow it.
Yeah, I honestly, here's the thing. I think I'm gonna try to watch this high because just visually, it's great.
Yeah.
But
also audio wise, it's I love the sound design of all this. I think one thing about the first one we should just to mention, it's very simply and kind of crudely drawn for the most part. It's very much just line drawings on a white mat until it gets to the outer net.
Yeah, the
where
backgrounds are very simplistic as opposed to I was incredibly impressed with how they do the backgrounds in the third one, which again we'll get into.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously that was made like 5 years after, so like Hertzfeldt probably had more resources to finish this up.
And he had made money from the first ones because of all the touring and the Vimeo and all of that nonsense.
Right. But anything else for the second one that needs to be said before we get into the plot of the third?
Really, even talked about what the second one is. So the second one is a time traveling Emily backup visits Emily, little kid Emily, to try to recover a memory, and it's a memory of her friend who is another backup clone of Emily, who is they lived on a planet together where they were backups, right? So each of them stores memory so that they would live longer. They would rotate by spending years in a stasis pod orbiting the planet, and then they would switch. And so they kind of got separated for most of their upbringing to make them live longer. And she was trying to recover a memory of that Emily from Emily Prime, because all of those memories would be implanted in her because of the stuff that the other Emily did in the previous one. So like, the idea is that she's going into little kid Emily's mind to try to recover a lost memory of her best friend, like that. So like, that's the core of what the story is, or what is happening in the second one. But eventually she becomes so distraught because she is a 6 and Emily's 6. So she is a little bit more on the late stage Michael Keaton clone of the spectrum of mental capabilities. So she's not emotionally stable, and she's very, very sad. And then she spirals when she starts to relive some of these memories, and then she goes into little kid Emily's mind, who helps her like heal, and then she goes back home. And then we get a fun little bit of her going on vacation with the other time Emily, seeing Emily in different stages of our life, which I absolutely adore. That's one of my favorite sequences.
That was a fun one. I like the
ignore us.
Again, going back to Venture Brothers, ignore me.
Yep.
Which also Venture Brothers has the whole thing about clones. So
yep.
Which God, I wasn't that movie announced a couple. Well, I mean, they had like 5 or 6. They would do like 4 years between seasons, so I'm not surprised
it's this year.
Them.
Don't worry about it.
It is this year.
It's this year. Don't worry about it.
Oh, it's HBO Max. Shit.
It's been recorded and animated. I mean, like it's done. Like it'll get released. It may not get any press, but it'll get released.
All right. Yeah. Okay, and then we get to the third one, which is David. You know, we actually get to see David, and we get to fill in certain blanks of the story. David is out like working on something in outer space.
I don't think he's working. I think that's the thing. I think he's just in space. I think there's just nothing anymore. Like, which I find just so like, yep, he's just trapped in an outhouse. He's trapped in the space porta potty, just staring at screens all day. That's his life.
God, sounds like such a life none of us can relate to. Just
not at all. No, the one that was made and released in 2020, definitely not.
Right. Yeah, and then he gets a message from, was it Emily 9?
A memory becomes unlocked because Emily 9 gave that message to that David when he was a baby. Right. And it was a memory implanted into him so that it only unlocks at a certain time in his life. So technically, all of the Emily 9 stuff is being told to a baby David, but we're getting all of this from the point of view of an adult David.
This is where it gets really complicated.
I love it. I love
basically,
it so much.
He goes on to then he gets sent to a mission. And by the way, you know, in tech sci-fi fashion, he can upload certain, basically like Neo in the Matrix. He can upload certain skills, but
not just certain. They're all there. Like it's just looking at all of your actual memories broken down as data. So every skill you have is broken down in a menu in front of you that you can see and access.
One thing that I caught that maybe some people won't catch on the first time, is when he's deleting stuff, because he has to delete certain skills so that he has enough memory, like
because her message comes from the future and the future, which is a thing you can kind of grasp now. The rate at which technology, like there's a whole scientific theorem at the way computer technology like exponentially grows. Like it doesn't just like rise like music. It like doubles and then doubles and then doubles and then doubles and then double. Like it grows so fast. So look
at computer. Look at
hard drive or video games, or even just hard drives.
Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up on a floppy disk, we were talking about 100 kilobytes of data. And now, because of this damn podcast, I have to buy an 8 terabyte memory unit for my computer so I can save videos on it. Like,
yeah.
And that's not that expensive, frankly. Like, it's not like a huge investment or whatever. Like, but like, it costs as much as what 8 kilobytes would have cost 20 years ago. So like just the rate at data expansion. Now think of that, but sending a message 500 years into the past. So just the size of data she's transmitting to the size of data he has is so small. It's such a simple yet practical and easy to understand sci-fi concept of just memory. We all deal with computers now, so we all know how much of a hassle it is to deal with memory. So what if that memory was also your life functions?
Right. But also like they talk about it in the first one. I don't know if they talk anything about it in the second one, but in the third one, they bring up again a memory David had of drowning when he was young and how that traumatized him. So he's going through all these different things, deleting them, except for advanced swimming, which I thought was like a darkly funny little joke that
especially when you realize he gets to a point where like he gives up motor functions and the ability to problem solve and the ability to walk, but he keeps the ability to swim because of his innate fear of drowning.
Which doesn't like he doesn't have to swim again in this thing. It's just like, yeah, that's just like a understandable fear he would have. So yeah, he gets sent on this journey in this other planet. He eventually has to go through a cave in which he's attacked by a worm and can only make like sounds.
Well, before he gets there, they get to a point where, because of Emily in the future, and because we know David is cloned, some clones of David, who are like the copies of the clones, the backups, have gone on the same journey because they have these memories of this journey that David Prime went on. So clones have time traveled into the past to go on the same like kind of like mission trip that David goes on, right? Like it's almost like a religious experience for them. Like their culture says we do this, except only David Prime has the directions. So Emily's like, look, some clones might be out there. You might see some dead bodies. I'm going to augment your vision so they all get blurred so you don't have to deal with the stress of seeing all these dead bodies. There's probably only going to be one or two of them. Don't worry about it. And then you just look out at the landscape and it is littered with clones of this guy. So it's like, it's not just that there's all these dead bodies, it's dead bodies of him. Like, so he is seeing future dead bodies of himself along this first leg of the journey. That's before he even gets to the cave, which is again a cool time travel-y sci-fi dumb concept. That's a very funny, very sad joke. My background is the mountains full of dead Davids.
Yeah.
And then the cave with the acid from the worms that he has to turn on his problem solving skills to get through the cave. So like, it's like, hey, just avoid the spit, because if you get on the spit, your tongue will fall out of your mouth and you'll uncontrollably scream for the rest of your life. And because he doesn't have the memory to keep the video playing, he has to delete his problem solving skills. And it's such a great joke where he just like, what, like, he just runs through the cave. They just spit on him. He just gets everything because he has no concept of avoiding it at this point. So he just like walks through it like it's so fucking funny.
Yeah, he gets through and
his tongue does fall out and he does uncontrollably scream for the rest of this part.
He reaches a robot that's supposed to tell him what's going on, but that robot has been there for so long that it's all rusted. Future keeps going, you know, they also the whole thing, is it explained at this part why he was sent back? Because there are Davids in which can actually go through time, go between time.
He does not get that message until, so when he gets to the robot that's supposed to have the message, because that robot is from the future, it's broken, but it's been there so long, he has to wait for time to catch up for that robot to have been invented so he can call a technician to fix the robot. And then he gets that message. Then he gets the second part of the broadcast from Emily, which is there is like a time bureau. Unfortunately, this is essentially the plot of Loki, where you go in between moments of time to commit assassinations or just make sure things go well. But essentially you slip in between moments of time. And these agents have like guns that essentially just give you a cardiac, they just stop your heart and you die instantly.
Yeah. And that's what happened to the David that died suddenly. And the movie I was going to reference to this part is, it kind of reminded me of Looper,
sure,
in a sense. Yeah. But I like that they explain it in it's like a film reel, and the black bars between frames are where they are at, which is interesting because I noticed in the first one they would do the whole like cut to black and then cut right back. Like it wasn't even like a lot of times it's not like noticeable in a way that I think is paced. Like you would think like it's not paced well, but if you get this concept in there, it's just like, okay, this actually fits. And
That
not to say
stuff
it's
can
not paced
happen
well.
in the moments between time, like that thing. Yeah. So the blackness is not nothing. Something's happening. You just don't know what it is. It's cool.
Yes. And yeah, this David brings the robot back, gets it to work.
Oh, that's also, we see David die, and then we see the God Baby program. So we get to see the David clone and so you do get a full sequence where you watch the clones like system happen, right? You see David get made, you see David 2 and 3, you see David getting primed to learn empathy, because there's the whole Godzilla sequence where like they're using VR to train him to be an empathetic person. Not the other Davids, not the backups, but David Prime.
Dude, this is where we're getting into the straws and the fucking red string. But by the way, the one David only kills the other David because he wants to be with Emily, which never happens, and that's because by the time we get to the one David figuring stuff out, he finds a way to go between time and finds David 4, I believe it is, and kills him before he kills the other David. But also then David 3 comes, kills that David. Then David 2 comes, kills that David. Then somebody else comes, and then the David 2 kills that person. Then another person comes, David 2 kills that person. And then he waits. Another guy comes, he kills that person. And then he kills David Prime.
Future David Prime.
Future David Prime.
Yeah. And, well, like, so the character beats of that triple quadruple cross are the assassin David gets killed by the original David, right? He gets taken care of. Then he gets killed by the late stage Michael Keaton David backup, who then gets killed by the other backup, the more okay backup of that David, who then kills the time cop and then kills the other time cop's backup and then kills future David Prime, because you can't really, the theory is that you can't like change time. Like,
I see. I didn't clock them as time. I didn't clock them as time cops because none of them did the splits.
That's fair. It's the red shirts in this one that makes them. But that's why David 2 is in a red shirt, because he's part of the time cops. That's how he has access to this, all this. And then, like, so after that David killed it, the other David, this is technically backup David 2, is kind of, he clones himself. So now the David that we saw die in the future is not actually a clone of David, but it's a backup of the clone of David. So that means that David's memories aren't fully intact, because it's how we remember. All of this is about how we remember things poorly. It's just like we kind of only pick and choose what we remember from shit. I love it so much. And then it's also all of this is grounded in a love story.
It ends with David 2 going to Emily 9
in the future.
In the future, recording the video for David Prime. And then that's it.
Yep. It ends with hi David. And then it's over.
Yeah, that it's a
really
incredibly
beautiful ending for something that's been so stupid and funny.
And incredibly complicated, but it is one of those sci-fi stories that it's complicated but understandable, because it's more about the emotions and the metaphor for memory and life and living in the past. I think a lot of the thing is like a lot of the meaning of this is about how people will live in the past. And
I love the third one really comes, and this is maybe my darker, less happy person, cynical attitude I have on life, but it really, there's so much about the third one especially, and the second one, that's about the burden of love. Of like, if somebody that you love, they're on your mind all the time, as in that message Emily sends back to David, where he has to keep deleting his actual functions and things he knows, because all he can think about is the person he loves. He doesn't even know that he loves that person yet. Like, there's something kind of, it's almost taking the concept that I hate in Interstellar, that love is throughout all time, and is not that just completely ruins that movie for me, and has done it in a way that I don't think is stupid.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I think, with I mean, that's definitely the difference between this and, you know, a Christopher Nolan sci-fi movie, is like he gets so into the ideas of these things that don't make sense, but where Inception works and Interstellar lacks, which I still think Interstellar is a good movie. It's just
agree.
It's just the ideas behind it are lacking. Like I said, is that it doesn't, you know, you get the basics of the Inception thing, and then you can just not think about how it doesn't work, which, you know, for you know, and I have a friend who, and again, to go back to Looper, I have a friend I showed Looper to, and he hates that movie mainly because of the time travel stuff.
Sure,
which
it doesn't really work.
I'll get it. Yeah, it doesn't really, and you know, Ryan Johnson, you can call us lazy writing or not. It's just basically like, yeah, you know, who gives a shit? It's time travel. That's not what the story is. But yeah, like Interstellar is too much of those ideas, and then tries to connect it to this idea that love is forever, where Inception does kind of have the same, you know, I don't want to say moral, but like a theme in one of the themes, and but the story and plot around it are so interesting and just go. You don't think about like, oh yeah, that makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, that one. So though, and this is my general thoughts on Nolan anyhow. It's just he's too caught up on proving to you that what you're seeing is cool. That the concept is cool, right? Isn't this a cool concept? Where something like this I appreciate because it doesn't give a fuck if you understand it. It doesn't care, because it has confidence in that the emotional elements of the story will carry through whether or not you can follow the sci-fi thing. If you can't track this cloning thing, which is, again, I think it's as well executed as you could possibly execute the complexity of this.
Yeah,
but also
I definitely think Hertzfeldt definitely sat down and actually you know, charted these concepts in order for him to make sense of it for himself, so he can tell the story.
And he doesn't care if you can follow, because he knows that the logic holds up on his end. But then that allows him to focus on grounding it as a more emotional story, which is why when the last line of this is not some weird time travel thing, it's a woman saying the love of her life's name. It has an emotional impact, even if you didn't follow the sci-fi stuff. You are, when they meet for the first time, because of the hour and 30 minutes you spent watching these three movies, that hits regardless of the sci-fi bullshit that's going on around it.
It's just good storytelling. I mean, that's basically that's all we're saying, is this, like, in order to get through this without like throwing your hands up and just like, what the fuck is this even about? The story behind it is well told. So you that's
not even to like factor in the other unnecessary complexities of, technically the David we're following is the David that was in the museum. Like taken out of because one of the early clones was just left in a tank for everyone to watch age and get old and die in a museum. Like, that was just a part of human experience, which seems like a thing that could happen soon in real life anyhow. Like, it feels like we're at a point where we're like, oh yeah, we made a human clone and it's art, so like whatever. Like, oh Christ, that's dark, isn't it?
Well, we already had human zoos and exhibitions in which, like, oh, look at this person from another culture and how weird they are, right? Like, that's a thing that happened in our actual history. So like, yeah, it's not
no, but
far-fetched.
I would say it is a stretch to create a life with the explicit purpose of serving an artistic function, right? Like, that is a whole ethical thing to I have been
I'm
unfortunately.
pretty sure that that's a. I'm pretty sure that's a that has. I don't know. I haven't seen that last David Cronenberg movie, but it
Infinity
feels
Pool.
like that's yeah. No. That's the other. That's Brandon Cronenberg. I mean, like the one from last year. David Cronenberg's.
David Cronenberg. Sorry, I got my Cronenbergs mixed up.
Yeah, it's like a Cronenberg is going to come out with a film each year,
Well,
and people are
I
going to
guess
have
where Infinity Pool is actually about clones and might actually be exactly about this thing, as opposed to the other one where it's blending tech. It's the classic Cronenberg of technology and flesh and sexuality all merging into one. Infinity Pool seems to explicitly be about clones and what fucked up shit will we do once we start cloning people. And hey, that's cool because just like this. World of Tomorrow is about doing fucked up shit once you have clones. Like,
and also like we're getting that Bong Joon-ho movie coming out. I think either later this year or the beginning of next year. Mickey 9.
Yeah, Mickey some number, but
Mickey
yeah,
7.
Robert,
think it's Mickey
Robert
7.
Pattinson. Yeah, very excited.
Which is pretty kind of the concept of like, hey, we have clones, but they do the dangerous jobs, and then we put the memories of the person.
Or the movie I think a movie you and I both really like, Moon.
Yes, Moon. I mean,
which is
like there's an episode of Doctor Who where this is like a two-parter, which is a two-parter I actually didn't like that much, but the concept was interesting.
Yeah, and I do think Moon's a very good movie. If you kind of are digging the World of Tomorrow, Moon is a fun sci-fi clone movie worth watching.
Yeah, it has the it's one of those unfortunate things of, hey, this filmmaker who I still like and want to see more of, Duncan Jones.
I like Duncan Jones.
Yeah, but Moon is fantastic. Source Code is okay. It's pretty good. Then he does World of Warcraft and that other one that I hear is very bad. So he's still like
say what you will about World of Warcraft. It made a shit ton of money, not in America.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I was just like, okay, overseas. That makes sense.
And that was before the Hollywood blockbuster became for the Chinese market kind of state we're in now. But he was an early adapter to that, and so Look, I love Moon. I actually really like Source Code. Like, I will go beyond Source Code.
Source Code is okay.
I think Source Code is a very good movie. I want more movies of that scale that are just kind of dumb action sci-fi stuff. I miss that era so much.
Again, Time Cop.
Which rules. Yeah, clones are cool. Clone stuff is cool. And again, I guess the reason I wanted to do this for Animation Month is because this doesn't look like it uses a bunch of different animation styles. It uses some decolorized live action photography. It uses terrible sound stuff, some really cool CGI. It uses abstract, like it's for the most part what you're seeing is abstract stuff. Like it is not literal representations on screen, which is cool as hell.
And also though, the character designs are so simple that through the complications of the plot and even some of the more abstract backgrounds and stuff like that, it's almost the man and woman on bathroom doors is basically what the design is.
It's Cyanide and Happiness, if you've seen those web comics. Like it's that kind of very simple Mr. Man type art style of just like, yep, it's a shape, it's human, like you get it, right?
It's a circle or
Emily,
with a either rectangular or triangle by triangles.
Yeah, I was to say Emily is a triangle with a circle on top. David is a bean with a circle on top. Just a little pea pod with a head on it. The robot is just a square. Emily draws flowers. It's a square. One of my favorite jokes. Look, I drew a flower.
But
I think one of the things that's really hard for us to talk about in this, and we shouldn't try to do it, is it's also really fucking funny. Like it's laugh out loud funny. Like some of the jokes and cutaways to it they make me like cry from laughing. Like it's really fucking funny.
Grandma, no, well, technically, you are my grandma.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
it
for
is
the
very.
first
I mean,
ones,
the interactions,
with Emily and
mainly
Kate.
with
Yeah.
little Emily and big Emily, because like it is like, hey, let's. I don't know if you remember those. I think like the first Funny or Die sketches with Will Ferrell and Adam McKay and
Yeah.
Adam
Oh yeah.
McKay's daughter.
The landlord.
Yeah, the landlord. You you pay rent now.
I like this one even more because it
Yeah.
really has that if you have a 4-year-old, which I'm 4 years away from having, they don't really focus. Like they're just their brain is going 100 miles per hour. And so this girl has the energy of I don't care what this future clone is doing because I am 4 and nah. So she's just like, oh cool, we're in my brain. Here's where the rabbits are. This is
It's the
dreamland. The
problem
trees
with
are made of cotton candy.
it's the problem with communicating with a child is that they don't have a good singular track mind.
But that becomes such a huge part of 2 because 2 is Emily spiraling out on one sad memory, right? And what saves Emily 6 in episode 2 is going to the mind of a child who just sees everything like it's new, as opposed to Emily reliving the memory of like, I lost Felicia, I lost my best friend, and she's like stuck in this. I don't want to look at my hopes. You know, they literally go through a sea of buried memories, and you can lick them and see all these memories. Or like, there's the swamp of hopes, right? Where like I dreamed of being a ballet dancer, and like Emily put that away. Like I don't want to see my hopes anymore. Like she's so. The second one where she's just so depressed, right? Like it's about a depressed clone. And then it literally takes seeing things through a child's point of view to like help her get out of it. And then she presumably dies. I think her brain gets erased at the end of that one. Like Emily 6, I do not believe survives through that story. It's
Well, it's yeah, it is. I mean, it is quite literally the adult version of Emily communicating with you could say their child, them as a child, but like, to make it like more real world, the inner child, the person that we used to be. And whether or not and how that little person views the world, and how a lot like everybody could stand to at least be reminded of how big the world was when we were that age.
And then it's immediately followed out by a very sad love story, because you had those 2 episodes of talking about David, and then you get David's story and are just,
which is still very funny.
Very funny. And I again, it's the animation of him losing his tongue and like screaming and all the worms spitting on him. Like that's a sight gag that like, it's always tough to talk about comedy, right? Because the best thing you can say is this thing was funny. But there's so many good visual jokes. It's not just, and it's also timing and editing, right? Like the joke that we already talked about, where like and there was lots of issues with time travel, with the Earth being off. Sometimes people would just be into space, and then it cuts away to like just a body appearing in space. Or then it does the same with and sometimes they just showed up in the Earth's crust and just crushed in the Earth. Like it shows all that stuff, and it's very funny. Or even watching the Davids that are littering the entire environment, the dead David clones, just go to blurry. Like they just become blurry as like
or just the image of them, because we see the one die, then we see another version come through, and then the mountains are covered, like the way that Mount Everest is covered in bodies.
Or even the running gag, which I don't think we've made clear through all of this, is the reason the file is so big that David has to keep deleting all of his motor functions and memories is because Emily is talking about nothing for days. Like she is just rambling on and on. She could just like, hey, take a left here and then go quiet, but she's not. She's talking about, here's a list of 302 things I like, and and she's just listing them all out, right? So she's like, it's kind of, again, it's how your mind gets so focused and obsessed with, like, especially when you love someone, right? It's all the little things they do that like just eat away at your brain and like just stay with you all the time. And for like David to be like, all right, I'm no longer going to be able to cook, I'm going to delete that memory. And then Emily's like, I had a friend in 3rd grade and we had tacos together. Like, she is giving him nothing. It is useless. And she is but like the 20 minutes of him exploring this planet, she does talk nonstop. And it's usually not even the focus of what is happening or in the scene. There is a constant noise of this woman chatting away to you while David goes on this journey and keeps deleting things. And then, as I mentioned earlier, at some point, she gets an arrow installed to point him in the right direction, which makes like a car horn noise every time it blinks. And that, and Emily talking now, all these things are like, she could have done this in a way that didn't eat all of his memory, but she didn't. I think that's such a funny joke that is just like not really talked about. There's not like a beat for it or whatever. I just think it's really fucking funny.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's I think we should be wrapping this up, but yeah, I think just get this on Vimeo or yeah, God damn it. Vimeo. Yes, Vimeo. God damn it. Fucking
Venmo.
Fuck. God damn it. Check this out on Vimeo or DVD or the Blu-ray. I'm gonna definitely look more into the special features because there's an introduction by Hertzfeldt and another short he did in 2021 called On Memory, which I haven't seen yet, and I think some other features there might be. Hopefully there's a behind the scenes thing. There's like we said, there's a little booklet that comes with it that has his thoughts on the project and the animating. Yeah, it's honestly, like, of this year and the last year, like, it's definitely something that I should look into more, and it's more non-traditional animation, more so than animation from other countries. I mean, I should definitely check those out more, but non-traditional stuff like this and Mad God, which I there's so many things like we didn't talk about in our 2022 episode, because I was just like, fuck, Mad God, yeah, that was great, and like this thing and this thing.
I honestly, this has Mad God energy to me, where I feel like, hey, I know this isn't getting that much attention, but I really do feel like people would like this if you saw it. Same with Mad God, guys. If you have not watched Mad God, you will like it. Full stop.
Or not, which is fine too, because it is very it is an incredibly gross movie.
Correct, but even just from a craft perspective, it is really hard not to be impressed.
It is,
and this has that same energy of just from being a fan of animation. I find this a visual treat. I think there's not a movie I've ever seen that has a color palette like this one. There's not a movie I've ever seen that sounds this one. It sounds so beautiful and unpleasant the entire time. And I mean that the entire time. There is not a lot of silence in this, and when it is stark.
Yes.
This just, I feel like this got slept on because it was independently made and it was independently published, and this isn't just out there and easy to find.
Yeah, you can't get it on Amazon or anything like that. You have to go to his website. Oops, sorry. I was just going through, just a second. I'm going through the Blu-ray now just to see what the special features are. And there's apparently deleted scene. But yeah, it's intro on Memory, another short film, and then a deleted scene from the movie. And also, like, it's not like a movie, it's 3 short films that connect together. So maybe if it was released as just a movie out in the film festival sphere, but we probably wouldn't get 2 and 3 if it wasn't just short films.
That is correct. But it is it's an hour and 38 minutes, I think, to watch all three of them. Yeah, it is a breeze.
I think it's like an hour 20 something.
Yeah, the last one is like 40 minutes, which 46 minutes. It's the longest of the three. The first
34.
one's the first one's like 14 minutes.
Yeah, the first one's 16 minutes, the second one's 22 minutes, and the third one is 34 minutes. So yeah, it's a breezy watch, but it is like
dense.
It's dense, and like, even if you could put this on mute and you'd be just like, I'm just enjoying how it looks. So yeah.
I'm glad you liked it, honestly, because I was pretty pumped. Obviously, I talked about this a bunch when I first got it, but
yeah,
I'm pumped you vibed on it.
Yeah, when you were talking about how, like, complicated it was, that's what worried me. But like, watching it, I was just like, oh, this isn't too far out of like what I would usually watch from this,
and it explains it. Like, it's complicated, but it goes out of its way to explain it to you. So it lets you figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's get into recommendations. Tanner, what do you have this week for recommendations?
I'm going to do two real quick. An easy one, just because we're talking about animation, and we're talking more adult animation, specifically in the superhero world we live in. On HBO Max for now, so I recommend you maybe watch this sooner rather than later, because who knows where it's going to go or how it's going to last. Young Justice is a DC animated series. It follows the exploits of younger superheroes in season 1. So think, it's Robin, Tim Drake's Robin. It's Superboy. It's that era.
Kid Flash. You get some Speedy. A
little bit. But
Aqualad,
it's Aqualad.
Superboy. It's basically, here's the thing: is like the first season is it's basically Teen Titans, but it's specifically the sidekicks and legacies of the major superheroes.
And season 1 is all fine and dandy, but the reason I truly recommend the show is for everything after season 1, which is only 4 seasons, and they're shorter TV series season. I guess it's up to 5 now, but the season 2 does a like legitimate time jump. Like a 5-year, 6-year time jump, where they're all like adults. They're young adults, right? And so every subsequent season has done that. The themes and stuff it hits upon, like they actually invented a new DC character for not the current season but the last season. Who is
Artemis was a new character for the show, right?
And Forager, who's a little alien creature I really like a lot. But yeah, like they essentially made a Middle Eastern.
Was Miss Martian in the comics?
She exists, yes.
Okay.
In not to the extent she is on this. Like, it's completely different, but it is a thing. But it really hits on heavy adult themes set in a superhero world.
And just to say, the first 2 seasons were on Cartoon Network, then it got canceled, and then when DC Universe started its streaming service, it started that back up, and then that went to HBO Max and continued up until now, which who knows what the fuck is going to happen.
It's still, they just released the second half of the Fandom season, and it's just really cool. It has like characters die in it, and they like die, like they stay dead. Like it has weight, unlike most superhero stuff now. Like it's emotional, character driven stuff. It's animated. It's
really great animation.
It is really good animation. Like,
I would say, aside from the Bruce Timm Justice League stuff, I would say this is the best animated DC thing.
Yeah, it really has animation style, I would say, comparable to like Avatar, the last Airbender series. I'm gonna say Avatar is better, but like that's not fair. Avatar is like incredibly well animated, but it is closer to
one of the most singularly best cartoon television series of all time. No qualifier, not just American, not kids. It is just like.
But I hold Young Justice in that same esteem. So that is my, like, hey, if you're into animation, check out this one that just people also slept on. Like, it just doesn't have the fan base I think it should. It's just a really good series. The one I wanted to recommend for you, and I'm hoping you've started watching it, Josh. Have you watched Poker Face yet?
Yes.
All right, Poker
Now,
Face
here's the
rules.
thing. Maybe that we should like pencil that in for the next episode where
I
it's just
agree.
us
I just
talking
wanted to.
because
Everyone should watch Poker Face, and we'll come back and talk about it in the near
no,
future.
I when it first came out, I did binge every episode and like that they came out. They came out with 4 episodes. First off, I love that the first episode is
Do you want to say what Poker Face is?
okay. Poker Face is Ryan Johnson's television series that he just created, starring Natasha Lyonne. She plays a woman who can tell when people are lying.
Bullshit.
Yeah. No, no, I'm telling the truth. Yeah, and you know, she usually says bullshit when it happens.
That's her catchphrase.
Yes, a catchphrase. Not to get too into the first episode, but because of events that happened there, she has to go on the run. And the thing is, one of the things I love about it is I'm a fan of Columbo, and I'm a fan of the 1970s The Incredible Hulk. And just like, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's
I knew
Columbo
you would love
and
this
the
show.
Incredible Hulk.
It's incredibly well written. It's fun mysteries of the week. Every episode is its own self-contained story.
Has great guest stars. Adrian Brody is the bad guy in the first one, who I love. I want him to be in more Ryan Johnson movies because
character actor Adrian Brody rules. Like just out there weird character actor Adrian Brody is my favorite Adrian Brody.
I think the thing is it's similar with Colin Farrell. Is this like, oh, what you need, you're not a leading man. You're a character actor who is who can be the star of that could be the star of a movie. There's a crime movie Adrian Brody's in that I kind of want to check out called Clean. But yeah, when he does characters like now, I think Adrian Brody, especially working so much with Wes Anderson as well, really is just tapping into the fact that, yeah, he's a character actor. He when he does fun stuff. I mean, aside from the whole dreadlock thing from Saturday Night Live.
Right, not to get you too into Poker Face right now. We will circle back to Poker Face.
Right, but
I
what
just
I'm
wanted to make sure you were watching it.
Yeah, but like all the guest stars, like Lil Rel Holley, is so sinister. Like you've never seen him like this. Like he's funny in the episode, but also very sinister. Which is like, wow, I kind of want to see more actor Lil Rel Holley. Howley.
Also, what a charismatic lead.
Yeah, I mean, like
I could watch her just talk shit to people all day long.
Yeah, and she's not the character isn't too out of the realm of like who she is. I mean, it's the same with Russian dolls. It's like, yeah, they're yeah. Anyway, no, we'll get into that, and by the time we talk about it, there will be another episode out. From that show, but yeah, Poker Face, it's wonderful. I would like to recommend an animated movie that I had thought I had seen, but I think I had only seen the sequel because it was one of our videos that we had at the house. An American Tail.
Yeah.
I was, I talked in the last episode, I was in Iowa City when we recorded that. I went to 3 movies. One was EO, one was Akira, which I recommended last week. And you know what? Fuck it. I'll talk about like An American Tail. It's just a beautiful movie. It's I want to say it's the first thing Don Bluth did after Disney. Either that or Land Before Time. But it is I mean, fuck, I don't even tell you, but like I had never seen it. It's one of those I thought I had, but it's like, it's very, as an adult, it's great to see having, more information about, 19th century, immigration to America, and also more information, knowing more about the plight of Jewish people in Russia at the time.
It's a baffling movie for kids who don't know any of the history. Like I grew up, obviously, this was a movie made the year before I was fucking born. Right. But so this movie was just part of growing up. And it's weird how much I loved this movie as a kid and now watch it as an adult and also love this movie. But now I'm like, oh, see, but now I know what a Jewish person is and I know the cultural and history. Why would you have shown this to me as a child who had no concept of what Judaism is or what the Jewish people went through?
I do think though that it is kind of good for kids to see stuff like this, to get these concepts early, in a way that they can somewhat recognize,
or provide a frame of reference, honestly, where you can go, hey, remember American Tail? It's kind of a little bit like that.
Yeah. There's an entire song just about the people that family members that cats have murdered.
I love it so much.
There are some like very broad stereotypes. I mean, the Mouskowitz family is basically right out of Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah.
Like other, Irish, Spanish immigrants, but not. I don't think to an extent that it's incredibly offensive. But also fucking Dom DeLuise was a national fucking treasure. And he's great as Tiger in this. And I think he's in a few other Don Bluth
Well,
stuff.
and a Madeline Kahn and a Christopher Plummer. Like,
yes,
there's some great cameos in this one.
Yeah, it's a really, really great movie. So Film Scene does this thing called the Picture Show on Sundays where they where kids get in free. It's cartoons, it's kids movies. They teach media literacy before the shows. They did a presentation on anthropomorphism. I was the only adult there without a child. So there was a bit of being uncomfortable there. I'm going to have to wait like 5 years where I could be like, all right, Roxy, my niece, Roxy, you're coming with me to this. I don't care. You come with me. I don't want to seem like a creep.
Half the reason I have a kid is so I can justify going to see the Minions movies.
I mean, if anything is proven, you don't need to have a kid to see those.
I just need to have a suit and be 12.
And fight in the that was insane. What happened?
We went through a Szechuan sauce thing. I get it.
Anyway, do we want to talk about the next theme month?
Yeah. Next month is of course February, which we all know as Floppyary.
Yes, we all know that.
Obviously, it's Floppyary.
Yeah, everybody. That's a universal concept, Tanner.
So we're going to be talking about movies that flopped big time.
Yes.
I know what mine is. If you want to unveil what we're going to do, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let's.
I'll gladly go first because you went first last month.
Okay. Go ahead because
we're going to watch one of my favorite flops. So I'm sorry, Josh, that I'm making you watch this movie, but I really want to talk about Blues Brothers 2000. That is the exact right reaction. But do I want to talk about Blues Brothers 2000?
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll talk. I mean, at least it's not Ladies Man or one of the other
Ladies
shittier
Man
SNL
rules.
movies.
That movie is so good.
Okay. I like Tim Meadows, so I'll give that a pass. And my thing, which is going to be actually watching technically 2 movies
and then some,
is Grindhouse, the Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez double feature of Planet Terror and Death Proof, along with short films from several well-known filmmakers and trailers, fake trailers, and one fake trailer from an unknown filmmaker who got to make that movie. Which is, I think, fantastic.
Technically more than one of them is now being made into a movie.
Okay, so we'll get into it, but like Machete, Hobo with a Shotgun, Machete 2.
Eli Roth is making his currently, I believe, Thanksgiving.
Is he actually making that?
I believe that is currently the movie he is making.
Which is weird because there is already a very low budget movie called Thanksgiving that has kind of a cult following.
I'm trying to think of what was the one he is doing one of his seasonal ones, and I'm trying to remember, but I know that he is currently making the movie he made the trailer for that. I'm very excited for it.
I am always
Yeah,
cautious
he's making
about
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I am always cautious about Eli Roth. I probably have said this before. I think he's very talented, but he also sometimes he just like is just not good.
Correct. But I'm always excited. But sometimes it is good. So
And sometimes you get a remake of Death Wish that completely misses the point of fucking Death Wish.
Yeah, but sometimes you get a cool trailer in the middle of Grindhouse, so it's fine.
That's true. Okay, anyway, thank you all for listening. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook. And I'm going to try to get the archives of our stuff put up. Might not be video unless you have videos still.
I can probably find some video for some older stuff if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'll probably try to drop stuff that we haven't even released audio, like Repo Man and Red Shoes.
Hells yeah.
But anyway, for I love this flick. I'm Josh Pfizer.
I'm Tanner Randall.
Keep cloning yourself and then cloning those clones and then going back in time and meeting your younger self, but also going between time and
hi David.